recently released a couple of reels about AI security conferences coming up this year. So I wanted to give you some tips if you are thinking of submitting some applications to be a speaker. Please follow, like, comment, subscribe, all the things to make sure that you get more advice like this and with other cool technical AI security content. But let's head on with the advice. So I've spoken at a lot of conferences, a lot of AI security conferences, ranging from different B-sides talks around the world in Canberra, Sydney, Melbourne, Singapore, Las Vegas, through to more corporate style conferences where I'm often paid to deliver like workshops or keynotes to companies like Lenovo, MasterCard, HSBC, even through to like big conferences like DEF CON, where I gave 2 talks a couple of years ago, Black Hat, a real mixture of like practitioner and then leadership based security content. And over the years, I've found that these tips really work for me. They don't just make my submission better, but being able to frame my talk proposal around these 3 things makes sure that not only does the talk get in, but it's at least good, ideally great. So tip number 1 is to lead with evidence or a genuinely new perspective. Do not submit another AI security talk about prompt injection. Please, no one wants to hear any more talks about prompt injection unless it's very new, like some very cool indirect prompt injection on like a Microsoft product, something like that. That's cool. But if you want to get a talk accepted, and if you want that talk to be good, it has to actually deliver something new. Now, that doesn't always have to be a new technique. You don't always need to find a new CVE and talk about it, but you at least need to deliver something with a fresh perspective. That can be non-technical, it can be about the human intersection, but if you are not adding to the body of knowledge with your talk, then not only will it probably not get accepted, but you want to make sure that your audience is actually getting something new and tangible out of it. Let me give you a couple of examples of different kinds of newness. So first of all, one kind of new technique was when I spoke at DEF CON and I talked about a new technical method for deceiving computer vision models. That was new in the sense that even though it was built on previous techniques, just like any new technique is, it was the way that it worked was fundamentally different. Like the technique specifically added things around an image that would prevent it from being detected, whereas other techniques you had to add some sort of like camouflage onto an image. And that got accepted in like academic papers and stuff, and accepted into academic papers is a really good signal of newness. Now, an example of something that's a bit more thought leadership new is when earlier, I was about to say this year, last year, 2025, I gave a talk saying that essentially the premise was that while AI security is typically characterized as a subset of cybersecurity, I argue that it's the other way around, because AI security, certainly now, but I believe in the future, is more about the way that decisions are made. So it'll sort of move from being defined as specifically models in an existing cyber ecosystem, and it will move towards being more about how decisions are made. And therefore, cybersecurity will move to being a subset of AI security. Now, that is more thought leadership because I can't necessarily prove that with concrete evidence, but I can talk through why I believe that to be the case, much the same way that if you're writing an essay, it's not like you're actually producing new things, but you're producing new thought leadership by organizing existing evidence into arguments in new ways. So even if you might not be someone who's like hands-on keyboard coding all the time, you can still definitely create something new. And that is that first very important tip for a good talk. The second important tip, and I would say this is really essential, even though it might sound quite aesthetic even, you have to have a good hook. You need to make it sound interesting. So for example, the talk that I gave at DEF CON, I could have presented a title like this: technique accepted into academic conference that instead of putting camouflage patches on a face, puts them around the face to make the probability of that person being detected decrease from 80 to 40%. That sounds very academic and boring, even though that is technically what it was. The other way I could have sold that talk was to say, on your Ocean's 11 team, I'm the AI guy, technically girl, which is the title that I ended up going with. Obviously, there's a couple of differences in the title, but obviously there's a couple of differences in the way that, maybe the first example wasn't necessarily a very concise title, you'd make that more concise. But if you think about the hook as being a way of presenting exactly the same talk, exactly the same technical ideas in that talk, but in a way that makes it interesting and you're actually selling what it is. So in the second example, the technique that I was talking about previously is a way of hacking facial recognition cameras. It can be done at casinos. Casinos are the topic of Ocean's 11. It's a much better way of hooking the audience in by linking to like fun pop culture references or putting yourself in the audience's shoes and understanding what they might be able to hear about that talk and why. And that leads into the very important third tip, that a talk is about the audience, it's not about you. This sounds really obvious, but so many public speakers fall into the trap of getting up on a stage and making it about them. They talk about maybe a technique that they authored and presented in a way that is just really boring. And I hate boring talks because I think it's so selfish of a presenter to give a talk and not make the audience enjoy it in some way. The audience should be enjoyed. They don't need to be laughing, but they should at least not hate sitting there listening to your talk. They should come away with some new content, but the best way to do that is to actually make it interesting, have an engaging style, think about the key takeaways that the audience will have. Are they a technical crowd? Will they want to see code? Or are they a non-technical crowd? Do they want things explained to them in a way that matches them where they are? And a real common trap that people fall into is that they assume that people will be very impressed with them if they're very, very technical, and they make it so hard for anyone else to understand. And so they'll give this very technical talk that goes over the audience's head because it makes the speaker seem like they really know what they're talking about. But the audience doesn't come away understanding more. They leave feeling really disempowered and dumb, and that is not a good thing to do. If that were a very technical crowd that wanted that kind of content, then that would be better. But you have to really think about what the audience wants throughout the creation of your talk, thinking about the delivery, thinking about what the key takeaways are going to be, even thinking about the way that you design your slides. All of those things are really important. So I hope this is really helpful and that you submit your idea to those talks, because you don't need to worry about it not being perfect. You just need to do it. And if you want to gain some of those public speaking skills, do some things along the way, like practice your talk to people, ask for feedback, but don't let it stop you from not submitting your talk. So good luck, and I hope to maybe see one of your talks.